But it could take 4 hours because it's a low priority, so I called airport security and they're on their way.
Okay. Okay, well, Happy New Year for anybody I haven't spoken to yet in 2025. This call will be a wrap up of 2024. There may be some stuff that I put together beyond this, just kind of looking at the 2024 numbers, but what we're doing today is our standard deck for the month of December. So let's get into it. You won't have a preview like uh, I've done in the past where we've had a bunch of slides that I send out in that email because I'm going to send the emails after this call now that I am recording them, and there'll be a link to be able to see it for people that aren't able to get on the call. But the first point that I would make here in this slide for December is it's one of the best months we had in the year, particularly on a year-over-year basis. We came in at just 1.66% below last year's volume. Part of that was a boost that we got because of the way the calendar fell in the beginning of the month. As we have already talked about, the return travel from Thanksgiving fell in December this year instead of November, so that certainly helped things. But even beyond that, I think the actual holiday period, when we look at these peaks out here, it was slightly below last year in terms of the number of flight hours, but not dramatically. So, pretty good month overall. So here it is when we look at our year over year, we haven't had anything that was close to this good, not quite 100%, but just below. So you can see that, it was a bit of a hockey stick here at the end of the year in terms of our year over year numbers. When we look at the actual volumes, you can see we were really just below last year and well above these other months. So interesting numbers overall. And here is the Part 91 trend. Here you can see that it was also a strong month on this front, actually well above. And I guess for anyone that hasn't been on these calls before, I have not been breaking out fractional. I've just basically been going charter and not charter because most of the folks, I mean, the original intent with this call was really charter. And then at one point, someone asked about the non-charter stuff. I would hazard to say that some of the boost that we have here is fractional. That has been the market segment that's been doing the best over the past year, really more than a year. So the combination of traditional Part 91 and the 91K stuff is how we get here. And that cohort was up 6.6% for the month and 3.1% for the year. When we look at it here, there weren't any true hockey stick moments in the Part 91 travel, but it's worth noting that this segment is up 42% since 2019. And then when we put the two things together and just look at all the sort of business aviation flying, at least for the aircraft and the operators that we think are relevant, you can see that we were up 3.99% for the month and 18.58% compared to 2019, which is almost 66,000 hours more than 2019. Looking at our size class stuff, you can see that the light jet category did better for the month than it did on the year-to-date trend, off 7% as compared to 16%, not quite as good as the category as a whole. Mid-size were kind of right in line with the average for all of charter, and this is charter aircraft that we're looking at in these categories, so way better than the year-to-date trend. Super mids, I don't think this is a surprise for anybody that's been on these calls before. Super mids have been doing it better than any other category, and you can see they were actually up 5.8% versus a 10% decline earlier in the year, so that's really strong. Large cabin off 1% compared with 8.3% for the year, so that was also a good month on the large cabin segment. And turboprops only off 3.2% compared to 14.3% for the year, so all the way around pretty good month for all these categories. Looking at our airport data, this is LA, including all of the airline traffic. As I've said before, we track a few airports that are really more airline traffic and include it all just as a comparison to see how that's doing. So for all the traffic in and out of LAX, we were up 3.5% for the month. Um, with just the GA, we were off 0.8%. That's a flip from what we've seen in a lot of other months. The GA traffic into LA has been strong. I think it's a combination, just in talking to people, of folks that are flying into LAX to make international connections, but also it is the airport that is closest to downtown LA if you're trying to visit people there. So in the holiday season, it's not a holiday destination, which has something to do with the numbers here this month. And then here is Van Nuys, which is almost break even for the year. It's been down 2.5% year to date, but did better than average this month. And we're going to see that trend for a lot of the airports in this deck. Here is LaGuardia. You can see that a lot of the flights into LaGuardia sort of taper off for the holiday period, so they've reduced those down here. We don't bother to pull out GA for this airport because there's really a negligible amount, but it's a good barometer for the New York Metro market just on the airport or airline side. And then here we take a look at Teterboro, and you can see that Teterboro is up 5.1% for the month, which is pretty darn good, and 0.7% for the full year. And just for reference, when we do the airport graphs, we're just picking relevant aircraft types, and we don't break that into charter versus 135. So this is more if you're running an FBO and you're on this call, this is a reflection of the operations in and out of your airport. And that's irregardless of whether it's charter or 91 or fractional, it's all everything. Here's White Plains, quite a spike there, 0.1% for the year, which really was made possible because of the strength of December this year, up 12.4%, over 1,000 flights more than last December. Morristown also had a pretty strong December, up 11.6% compared to last year, and up 3.4% for the year to date. A little bit of that bump was because we didn't have the runway construction this year. Here's Chicago Midway. This is including Southwest and any other airlines flying in there. And then so it was off 7.2% on that basis. But then when we pull out the airline stuff and just look at the GA, we're up 8.7% and 3.3% for the year. So Chicago's most popular BizAv airport did pretty well. And then this is the suburban airport for Chicago, which was up 0.4% for the year and 8.6% for the month. So strong months for suburban Chicago. Here's Atlanta. This is Hartsfield, up 2.3% for the year and 4.8% month to date. This is including all the airlines in there. When we pull those guys out, we're still up 4.7% for the month. It gets a little bit choppy because this is not a super popular BizAv airport, and we don't get that many flights in and out of there. You can see that just Peachtree to DeKalb is on a whole nother level in terms of the amount of flight activity, and Peachtree to DeKalb was up 0.2% for the year, 2.6% for the month. Then we look at Boston, and this one we also do the airlines and non-airlines. So here's Boston with airline traffic. It's a nice parabola there with a spike here or there. And here it is when we pull out the airlines. It's been a pretty good year for GA in Boston, up 14.7% and 8.8% for the month. Here is our suburban Boston metro area airport, which is Bedford, off 1.9% for the year, up 4.7% for the month of December. Reagan, another one of these predominantly airline airports, and with all the TSA regs for flying in there privately, there is negligible GA traffic. We don't even bother to report that, just like LaGuardia, but it's just worth noting that the airline activity in this airport was up 3.2% for the month. Here is Dulles, obviously an international gateway airport. You can see the difference in the travel patterns between an airport that's primarily domestic, that has the pretty consistent drops in volume on the weekends and then picks back up during the week. And then you have an airport like this with the international traffic. Well, this one, JFK, Boston, all follow different patterns because of the international travel. This is including all the airline traffic. When we pull that out and we're just looking at GA, you can see that there was quite a lot of activity in December at Dulles, up 20% for the month and 6.2% for the year. Here's Manassas, which is a suburban DC airport, and we're up 1.1% for the month, which is compared with minus 4.4% for the year. So good postings for that month. Here is Charlotte. As I've said in prior calls, there's been quite an increase in airline traffic there. This is a big spike in predominantly American Airlines volume. And when we look at GA, December was pretty strong for GA2, up 22.1%, which pulled the year up to 3.4% into the positive. So pretty active GA market there. Here is West Hampton. We're way off season here, and the number of flights is way down. So we take these percentages with a little bit of a grain of salt. Essentially, for the year, we were kind of on par with where we were in the past. And for one reason or another, we were off slightly more. We do look at this and we're not, it's less than 100 flight difference in the month. So this is a difference, but not significant in the grand scheme of things. When we roll over to Colorado and the ski country airports out there, you can see that when we include airline traffic was off for Aspen in December by 10.6%, gets off 18% when we pull out the airlines. So this was definitely a situation where the Aspen market had a weaker December than in the past, and the year as a whole was off 3.2%. Here's Eagle. Slightly different story for the year as a whole, up 4.4%, but the month to date here was also off slightly, down 3.1. And I should say that first slide was with the airlines. So when we pull the airlines off, it's just like we had in Aspen. It's a slightly different story where the airport is weaker when you pull the airlines out. So it was off 6.7%. Ski country was not as popular this year as it was last year. Here's Denver Centennial, which is our BizAv airport in the Denver metro area, up 8% for the month, off 1.1% for the year. Nantucket, been very interesting this fall, how much activity there has been out there, up 49% for the month, which is pretty crazy. A lot more people wanted to spend time out there, and up 6.2% for the year. Martha's Vineyard, same deal. The islands have been more popular, and so we're up 4.8% for the year and 23.6% for the month. Granted, that is give or take 150 flights there, so it's not thousands. Here is Napa on the West Coast, off 3.9% for the year and 3.8% for the month, so essentially following the trend. Here is Bandon Dunes. Some folks want to play golf up there clearly in December, up 25.4% on a year-over-year basis for the month and up 5.3% for the year. Scottsdale, would have been surprised if we didn't see these kind of numbers there. Scottsdale's been, strong, growing. They need, if anything, more capacity at that airport. It is insanely busy. 15.8% up for the month and 6.3% for the year to date. Jackson Hole, we only really look at Jackson Hole as a total. It is off 8.67%. So there's another instance of a ski country airport that was weaker year over year. That said, for the year as a whole, Jackson is up 1.5%. Here is Hilton Head, had a strong Christmas season, holiday season there, up 4.9%, which is materially better than the half or 0.4% drop that we've seen for the year to date. Now, rolling into our bucket of other cities, here is Addison in the Dallas market, was up 18.6%. So pretty strong performance there, especially compared with the 0.4 drop that we were showing on a year-to-date basis. Here's Dallas Love, including the airlines, which was off 1.6%. It flips the other direction. When we pull out the airlines, we're up 3.8% for the month, off 1.9% for the year. Then we get into Florida and Opelika in the Miami metro area, up 2.9% for the month, 0.2% for the year. So good numbers down there. Fort Lauderdale International, including the airlines, was even for the year, off 1.9%. However, it was up 7.6% for the year, and you can see some nice spikes in there in the holiday season for Fort Lauderdale. Here is Fort Lauderdale Exec, which you can throw a stone to from International, off 5.6% for the year to date and off 3.5% for the month to date. Naples up 6.6% for the holiday season in December and 3.7% for the year. So pretty good numbers there. Note 60,000 flights, give or take, is what we're seeing out of that airport. I mean, incredibly busy. And then here is West Palm Beach, which is 3 times busier, or more than 2 times busier. And this is including all traffic. We pull just the GA. We're still 90,000 GA flights out of West Palm, which puts it in, I believe, the top 5 in the country. It is up 5% for the month of December and off 2.3% for the year, so off a few thousand flights. That Nassau rounds out our airport-specific deep dives here. So we are off 7.7% for the month and 2.4% for the year for Nassau. Now I'm going to just jump to the latest chart here. I have a few months worth going back in there. Here is the last 2 weeks. You can see this is maybe the most international I have ever seen this OD chart go. So an awful lot of the islands and Mexico kind of shown up here in this chart. So those were very popular destinations. Everybody wanted warm weather. Apparently warm weather over ski weather for this particular holiday period. It's also worth noting the north-south corridor between Florida and New York was, as hot or busy as you're ever going to see it. So in full swing, I guess I'd say. So that's what the top 50 OD pairs are looking like. You will note that, the Teterboro to Van Nuys, sort of LA to New York traffic is down because this was more of a leisure travel period. Then when we look at fuel, this is just a few months worth of that I leave in the deck. So here we are in the last couple weeks. The fuel prices in general have gone up. There was, I think in the last period, we were saying fuel prices were down except for Alaska and Hawaii. Well, now Alaska is down a little bit, and most of the rest of the country is up to some degree, with New Mexico standing out, with prices there going up an average of 25 cents a gallon. Then when we look at absolute costs, no new surprises there. Colorado, Alaska, and Rhode Island take the cake in terms of most expensive places to purchase jet fuel. And that brings us to the end of the deck. At this point, if anybody has any questions, thoughts, or anything you'd like to bring up with the group, we got about 30 people on the call here. You can feel free to chime in the chat if you'd like to do it that way, or unmute yourself if you have a question you want to throw out. I'm happy to go back through any of the slides that we did if I went through it too quickly or you have a question on it. I also have the ability to pull up any airport dynamically if you want to see an airport that you didn't have in the deck. So with that, anybody have thoughts or questions? This is the end of 2024. How do we feel about that?
Hey, Greg, there was a message to check Sonoma STS.
STS, sure.
Yeah.
Hang on, and I can pull that up. Just bear with me for a minute. You know what? I am going to have to follow up. So I can put that I will put it in the deck that I send out after the call. But right now, I think I have to do something I can't do while I'm recording this call in order to get into that system. So if there are any other airports you'd like, let me know. And since I am going to send an email out, like the ones I used to send before the call, after the call, I could put any any airport that you're looking for that I didn't.
Hey, Greg,
Yes.
it's Gary from FRG. Happy New Year to the group. Can you
Yeah.
add FRG to?
For you, Gary, I will add FRG as a 2025, so we can add one more New
Yes,
York
please.
area metro airport. Well,
All right.
right.
Thank you.
Happy to do that going forward.
Thank you.
And nice to hear from you. Happy New Year.
Likewise. Likewise.
Yeah. So I'm seeing in the Slack here, we got Malachi saying, geez, was hoping for a bigger positive bump. Yeah, it's still a move in the right direction, Malachi. I think you're right that the election's over and business aviation is probably not going to face political headwinds going forward, but there's still probably some uncertainty out there, and we're just going to have to see how that rolls out. I agree. I think everybody on this call wants to see more private aviation flying. And Craig, you would like to see the charter slide again, so sure, I'm happy to go back to that. Malachi, it'll be interesting to see if after January 20th we see, this February and March of this year really look materially different. I'd like to hope so. Oops. So here we go. Here is the charter slide. Off 12.57% for the year to date and off 1.66% for the month. You may find other folks that are saying that charter was up slightly. I'm just very particular about what we consider charter. So it tends to take, at least over the past year or two, it's been a slightly more pessimistic is probably the wrong word, but it's been a more critical view because there are some cargo and medevac things that I think wind up in other people's numbers that misrepresent actual charter flying. But then we take a look at this here. This is just every month is now its own bar on the chart. And you can see that December, did pretty well compared to other months of the year. It's really, I have to look at the numbers offline. It looks like it might be slightly below March, but a very strong month, much stronger than November and October. And if you looked at prior years, October was stronger than December. So this was a good month that way, and it was only slightly below last year. So that's what we got on the charter front. Anybody else? Anything? Pilot hiring going to be easier next year? Anything else anybody has as a thought or comment as we roll into 2025? Anybody else want to lobby for another airport in the deck? Okay. Well, then if that's it, next call will be 2 weeks from today, and we will be going through the first half of the month of January, and we'll see where we're at there. Fire updates. Malachi is throwing that out there in the chat. Anybody have any updates on the fire situation out there?
Hey, Greg, this is David with BizJet CPA. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, we're one county south of where all the fires are happening, and it appeared that they had a lot of the fire contained last night because the winds had finally died down for the most part. But then today, as a matter of fact, just within the last 30 minutes, another fire has sparked up towards Mount Wilson, which is about ready to take out all the television and radio station antennas at the top of that mountain ridge. So that'll be interesting to see how that adversely affects communication in the region. Aside from that, because the winds have died down in other areas, they've gotten a bit better hold on the situation. So we'll see.
Well, super, David. Thanks for that update. I'm sure everybody, we're all rooting for you, or, hoping that the situation gets under control as quickly as possible, and appreciate that update. All right. With that, anyone else going once, going twice? Anything you'd like to ask the group? If not, like I said, we'll talk again in a couple weeks, and we'll have the first half of January to talk about. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Yep. You bet.
Thank you.
Sure thing.